by Kennedy Wilson. And today we have Brent Orton from the City of Caldwell. Brent was raised in Eastern Idaho, where he met and married his sweetheart, Tanya. They've lived in Caldwell since 2005. They have 12 children and expect number 13 later this summer. Whoa. Brent holds a Bachelor and Master of Science degrees in Civil Engineering from the University of Idaho and has served as the Public Works Director for the City of Caldwell since 2009 and worked for Caldwell in other capacities starting in 2005. And we asked the City of Caldwell if they would talk to us about how municipal irrigation districts and agricultural irrigation districts work together out here particularly in Canyon County. Possibly there's some of that going on in Ada County. Anyway, so the name of his talk is Working Like One Entity. So thank you, Brent, and take it away.
All right. Thank you very much.
One I forgot to mention, feel free to ask your questions in the chat during the presentation, and I will pass them on to Brent.
Yeah, happy to take any questions as we go along. So thanks so much for asking me inviting me to be a part of this today. We appreciate what Brent does, and I hacked out some of your stuff from your website that's in the presentation. We'll just give a quick overview of what we're going to discuss here. Let me get this going. So first of all, I think we'll talk about what I would call community core, and what I guess, in my opinion, the foundations that we're working with in the Treasure Valley. And then we'll talk a little bit about municipal irrigation districts versus a traditional or a conventional irrigation entity, statutory basis for irrigation entities and the requirements, a little bit about how land development, I think this is kind of the heart of some of the things that we're wanting to explore today, land development and irrigation, how's that work with, especially with the intersection of agricultural irrigation and urbanizing irrigation, working together with irrigation entities and municipal irrigation entities, some thoughts about what the future looks like, and then questions and answers, which we can do as we go through, and we have time. I will plan for some time at the end as well. So this picture on the right is just for some fun historical background, is when Indian Creek flooded Caldwell in like 100 years ago. I think it was 1906. So community core. I am very interested in leadership and promoting leadership principles through all of our ranks, because I feel like every single person is or can be a leader, and leaders work together to make things good. I appreciated Bren's mission statement to promote the ecological enhancement of the Boise River. That's not the whole statement, but it's a summary of a very nice statement. People working together, and Mike Somerville is a friend of mine. I know he was involved with Bren in the coordinating team sometime back. But I think that what this boils down to as a foundation is people. People are the most important business that any of us are in. The people we work with, the people who we work for or supervise. And I think that's a critical foundation of working together and making things work. When you're working with good people, I mean, if you like an entity or you like an organization, it's generally because you've had a good experience with people there, or you've seen that there are people there that care. So just a few thoughts in regards to people. In the Treasure Valley, a lot of people come from agricultural roots. Our economy is still to this day based on strongly on agricultural products, production of primary sector products that are then and processing, and that's still a huge component of Idaho's economy. And so I think people can relate to that. I grew up hoeing sugar beets every summer, milking cows for my backyard neighbor was a dairy farmer, and so I got to milk cows and get a little exposure there. And then my wife, with our big family, we ran out of room in our house. I know it's not a big surprise, and we ended up having to build a house to fit us. And my wife really wanted to farm, so we've got a little dairy farm. We milk a couple cows. My son, when asked if he's going to have cows when he grows up, he's like, no way. But I hope it's doing him some good now. It's a good work ethic trainer, I guess. Another characterization of our community is, I think we got a good example of it last year when there was when we had the beginning of this pretty significant drought. We had an issue with people using drinking water for irrigation purposes, and we pumped more water last year during that hot spell than we've ever pumped before into the drinking water system. And we put out a little press release and some other media approaches and just said, hey, please be careful with the drinking water. Let's not use that and the irrigation water. Of course, we're trying to conserve both and partnered with an irrigation district to provide the public with our hopes, and we had an excellent response. The public was very responsive. When that hit the news outlets and things, people immediately responded, and we didn't have any more problem with heavy pumping of the drinking water system. And I think people were very conscientious too about conserving water. We've also seen conservation of water advancing steadily for decades, right? People care more and more about doing the right thing and about their fellow man, and I think that's especially prominent in the Treasure Valley. I really am impressed with our community here across the whole valley. Caldwell, we built the Indian Creek Plaza a few years ago, and the public was very invested in it. And the plaza, if you ever get a chance to see some of the interpretive content about the plaza, it's got things that symbolize the river, and probably more over Indian Creek, which is of course a big deal to Caldwell. The railroad, the geologic history, and then the family values that Caldwell has, and people really rallied around that, and it was really fun to see. People care. There's bad guys, of course, but most people care, and there's a lot of good in people. So that, I think, is the foundation of what makes things work. Another evidence of people's care is, I think about Mike Somerville promoting this. I talked to him a little bit about this, and I don't know how much that was a part of things, but I see these farmers who want to make sure that their return water is cleaner when it's returning to the, that's one of our big sources of sediment in the river and in the drains and in the creeks. And see these farmers who of their own accord go out and dig settling ponds to help clean up the sediments that are coming off the field. So I just think it's an excellent community, and that's the foundation for things to work well. This is my family in a log in the Redwoods. And it's a blurry picture, but I like it. So there you go. My wife's amazing, as you can imagine. And so none of this would work without her. She's phenomenal. I think sometimes she considers me to be one of the kids. I'm not sure. Okay, so irrigation, municipal irrigation versus our conventional irrigation. Of course, the Treasure Valley it is the agricultural mecca that it is because of irrigation. And for more than 100 years, that's been a critical thing. Caldwell's irrigation history in brief is that flood irrigation was started, great orchards here, great spot for orchards. We kind of consider the Treasure Valley and Caldwell too as part of a kind of banana belt for Idaho. Irrigation, we have a lot of impermeable geologic strata that actually caused that flood irrigation caused the subwater to rise and killed off lots of agricultural products, trees, orchards. And so the Bureau of Reclamation assisted with deepening natural drainage ways to create the drain network in Caldwell. And that's, with those two things, we've had a great success as an agricultural producer. Seeds, of course, are a big deal here, the orchards, the vineyards. So this is Indian Creek on the left. That's in the Millennium Falcon. Since we're close to May the 4th, this is the Millennium Falcon that my daughter and her friend built for the Indian Creek Festival cardboard canoe race. And then just some examples of pressure irrigation and gravity irrigation. Just in the corner of this lower left picture is, you can see one of the city's pump stations. Pioneer Irrigation District originally was providing pressurized irrigation for subdivisions when we had our first boom here in 2004, and before that, I guess, the early 2000s. And we worked together to take over. They want to not be in that business. They have a pretty heavy burden to carry in just making sure that water's getting to everybody. And they also have responsibilities with interest to the Bureau of Reclamation's drainage system. So we took on the pressurized irrigation system from Pioneer beginning in 2005, I believe, and maybe 2004, transitioning into 2005. So what is the difference between a municipal irrigation entity and conventional irrigation entities, water companies, and irrigation districts? So an irrigation district proper is a quasi-governmental entity, and they are governed directly by Idaho statutes under Title 42 and Title 43. Municipal irrigation districts are governed under Title 50. And you're going to see me refer to irrigation districts as real irrigation districts. We kind of see ourselves as perhaps not a real irrigation district, because as a municipal irrigation district, because we are governed by a different set of laws, and there are fewer elements in the statute related to municipal irrigation districts. What we really are, a good way to think of us, we sometimes think of ourselves as a delivery agent. As an example, if you're familiar with the function of Boise Project Board of Control, besides many other functions that relate to the Bureau of Reclamation projects and their project in specific, they deliver water on behalf of Wilder Irrigation District and Nampa Meridian Irrigation District. I live 2 miles west of Farmway Road in Caldwell, and I am served by Nampa Meridian Irrigation District, delivered though by the Board of Control. So my ditch rider is a Board of Control employee. We're that on a smaller scale and with fewer additional responsibilities than the Board of Control carries. We deliver water that we pool from those who hold water rights within Pioneer Irrigation District, Wilder Irrigation District, Nampa Meridian Irrigation District. And that's where most of the water rights are sourced. They're water rights that are either pertinent to the property or water rights that are, a real irrigation district can hold water rights. We as a municipal irrigation district, the city can hold water rights, and that is the manner in which the irrigation entity can, or the municipal irrigation district can hold water rights. So we work with those irrigation entities and we make agreements with them to facilitate receiving water from them. We pay them an irrigation assessment. They continue to hold to be the entity that issues those assessments. So we pay those assessments on behalf of all the properties that are annexed into the irrigation district, the municipal irrigation district. And so in that, you end up with this overlay. You've got Pioneer Irrigation District. Someone doesn't leave Pioneer when they annex into Caldwell Municipal Irrigation District. They're basically accepting an overlay. And then the service we provide is we pool that, we pay the assessment to Pioneer, and then we charge them an additional assessment to pay for electricity and pump maintenance to pressurize the system. When a subdivision is built in Caldwell, they create a pressurized irrigation system as a requirement of subdividing. And we're working hard to try to master plan and create more regional pump stations. It's more efficient for everyone, and it's more efficient for us to maintain. So it's a better go for a lot of people. It's better for the customer because there's less infrastructure for the city municipal irrigation district to maintain. A small pump station, if we have 75 subdivisions and we have 75 pump stations, there's a huge increase in labor and equipment and maintenance costs as opposed to if we could handle those 75 subdivisions in 15 pump stations. And so there's a big value to kind of combining resources. So we're often working with developers to connect into a regional pump station. And it's great for the irrigation provider, the real irrigation district, we'll call them, because we're able to work with them to find places where it's optimal for them to deliver a large quantity of water, and where the capability to overflow that water is good. Pioneer is very conscientious about conservation, but there is some realities to managing an irrigation delivery system like you. You've got canals, you've got deliveries, and if someone stopped taking water, your canal is going to rise. They have to keep that canal from overtopping. So they have a complicated mechanism to operate, and it's important for them to have places where water can be overflowed to these reclamation drains as a primary example, and to other drainage functional or other drainage facilities. Okay, so that's kind of municipal irrigation districts. So what about real irrigation entities? I'm not an expert at this, but I know some about it. And things aren't always great, right? In 2008, with really over the stormwater discharge question, Pioneer Irrigation just sued the City of Caldwell. I feel like I've had a good rapport or good relationship with people that I value as friends and respect at Pioneer before, during, and after that process. But there was important questions they needed to have answered, primarily because of the risk of the EPA changing their view on the exemptions that exist for agricultural irrigation entities because of the influence of city stormwater. And so that was really the question at hand there. And that was resolved. It did take a lot of time. In 2013, that case was settled with cooperative agreements and I think a cooperative outcome. So that is to say that there are difficulties and things don't always work great. There's conflicts in what needs to happen. And that's really, if I can throw in, that's the title, that's the reason for the title of this talk. Working as one entity. As Pioneer and Caldwell, we're trying to figure out, how do we solve this problem? How do we're serving the same people. You know, many of these people are our common customers. Our agricultural folks, if they're not in the incorporated limits of the city, they're still users of the services in the city. All of these folks are our customers together. And so we found, as we worked together, that our best route for generating ideas to find solutions were when we pretended that we were the same entity. You know, if we were the same entity, what's going to be the most efficient way for us to get at this? And it really harkens to what we talked about with combining irrigation pump stations for development into single pump stations, into regional pump stations. It serves that need for Pioneer. It's more efficient for them. It's more efficient for Caldwell. It's more efficient for the customers. They're going to pay less money in the end, and we'll have a better, more sustainable system. So real irrigation entities are organized under two titles of state statute, Title 42 and 43. And 43 is the one that talks about, how do you establish an irrigation district? What are the requirements? It's really an organization oriented statute. 42 talks a lot about operations, water rights, and protections. As an example, one of the protections that exists under state statute for an irrigation entity is that you can't, this is why they have, you know, you might have your property might go to the center of a ditch or canal, but you can't go put a stormwater shed on their ditch rider road. And the reason why is because state statute protects them from material or unreasonable interference with their capability to deliver water. And they're very good. These irrigation providers are very savvy about the law, and they're very savvy about what needs to happen. That's important because there's a lot of people out there, and it's pretty easy for encroachments to happen and things that could really inhibit their capability to perform that function, especially juggling these the difficulty of delivering water when there's so many inputs and outputs. You know, when we do algebra, we want to have an equation for every variable, right? Or at least one less. We can get away with one less. And so they have lots of variables they're dealing with all the time. So those protections are helpful and important. There are statutory requirements that fall on both municipal and real irrigation districts. We, as a municipal, we pool water rights as prescribed by city or by state code. The way in which we make assessments is dictated by state code, down to the date by which we will notify the public of what we intend the assessment to be, the method by which we derive the assessments that will be charged for pressurizing irrigation, providing irrigation, the method by which we differentiate who should pay more and who should pay less. So it's well spelled out in state statute what we can and should do as a municipal irrigation provider. There are similar elements in state statute and more of them in place for conventional irrigation providers, or Title 42, 43 irrigation providers. In both instances, assessments have a huge force in Idaho law. If you want to think of it, some people refer to them as a tax, others as an assessment, but they're high on the list of, if you don't pay your irrigation assessment, we don't pay our property taxes, our home could be lien and ultimately sold in a tax sale. Above that capability on the list is the irrigation assessment, both for 42 and 43, Title 42 and 3 irrigation entities and municipal irrigation entities. So there's a lot of force placed on that. I think it's because of the agricultural foundations of Idaho. It's a big deal. More about cooperation. I talked a little bit early on about City of Caldwell and Pioneer combined to notify the public of things, and I really like that. I appreciate Mark Zersky, the superintendent, and Kirk Myers, the assistant superintendent at Pioneer, very well. We work a lot together, but it's not perfect. Sometimes we make a misstep, and I'll give you an example. 2021, we worked very closely to figure out what are we going to be able to do in terms of surface water. We're going to scale this back at our pump stations and cut those deliveries back. We're going to ask the public to step back on what they're doing and irrigate odd even days. Extremely helpful. If any of you live in an entity that's asking for odd even watering days, it's great. It really helps. It basically means you get the whole pump station, you and half the other people get the whole pump station to yourself for that day. And it means people experience way better service, and the grass is happier with not being watered every single day. It forms deeper roots, it becomes more resilient. So the 2021 irrigation season, and then coming into this season, we knew that we were looking at another potential severe drought year, and possibly one worse than last year. Thankfully, this rain's been a huge blessing and an answer to prayer that I think has softened things, increased our snowpack. We don't really know where we stand, but it's way better than we thought so far. But we made a press release this year and used a lot of the content from last year's press release. And I got a call from Mark Zersky. I told our public information person, yep, we're good, go. Mark called and said, hey, Brent, we appreciate you doing this, but were you planning to talk to us first? And I was like, we didn't talk to you first. And, in an entity with lots of employees, sometimes that doesn't happen. And I did not check to make sure that we had talked to Pioneer first. I assumed that we had. And there's sayings about what assuming can do for you. And so that was an error on our part, but Pioneer is very gracious about it. And just a chink in the learning belt, I guess, to help us remember or help me to remember as a public works director that we coordinated as we should be. We talked a little bit about this already, so I'll pass over this slide pretty quickly. Just the state statute governing real irrigation entities. I think that's a little redundant. I'm sorry. Okay, so what happens when municipal development or urban development is overlapping agricultural development? When I came to work for the City of Caldwell many years ago, I worked for Jefferson County and Canyon County while I was working my way through college. Before going to U of I while attending Rick's College for a while. And I used to, there's a sentiment that you get at entities, and it's good to work in different places, I guess, because it helps us see more of the picture and more of what entities are going through. But when I was working for Madison County, the city of Rexburg is in Madison County, and they had one little enclave there. And I was like, oh, that's so disgusting. That's irresponsible growth. why do they have that enclave there? Well, I came to work for the City of Caldwell. I don't know if you've looked at a map of our incorporated limits, but we have a massive number of enclaves. Lots and lots of this is in, this is out. Thank heavens for wonderful partners, Canyon Highway District, Pioneer Irrigation District, because we're able to make cooperative agreements so that we can organize the manner in which we take care of roads and other infrastructure so that it's efficient for the public. With Canyon Highway District, for instance, we identify stretches of road and make nice continuous pieces of road and agree to maintain those. I will give you my opinion of why that growth happened that way. That's concerning to a lot of folks. And unfortunately, it has a political root, as I perceive it. There was periods of time during which it was pretty easy to get a city density approved in an unincorporated area through the land use process. And there was a lot, maybe a little less protection of agricultural land, and it's very easy to go to an agricultural piece of land and meet the 300-foot radius requirements of the Land Use Planning Act when there's like no one in that 300-foot radius or very few people. So that was attractive from that standpoint, to be able to get things approved and not have a lot of public concern about developing, right, wrong, or indifferent. The City of Caldwell was aggressive about accepting applications for development, even if they were going to create an enclave or a little, foreign body here that's just touching by a annexation path, because it meant that development would be building curb, gutter, sidewalk, sewer, water, instead of having 60 new wells, 60 holes in the ground. And if time permits, I want to make a comment about that because I think it's of interest to Bren, how we protect that resource and its influence on our water resources and river system. So we accepted several, and that was a good alternative to something we have experienced and have a number of examples of, where a subdivision's developed in the unincorporated area. They have individual wells or a community well. They have individual septic systems on pretty small lots, sub-acre lots, and those systems begin to fail, and it becomes a public emergency because you have citizens who have to have sanitary service and they have to have drinking water. And so you end up with these costs that the public bears at least a fraction of. The owners bear some of that too, but they bear some of the costs associated with getting water or sewer service to folks whose founding developer did not provide those services, and now there's an emergency. So there's numerous examples of that in Caldwell, and then it ultimately is a public expense to help get curb, gutter, and sidewalk built, or other improvements that people will begin to desire because they're now incorporated into an urban environment. That's my opinion of why Caldwell has grown the way it has with numerous enclaves. And I do think that while it's not good to be spread out like that from a planning standpoint and an infrastructure standpoint, even, it is better than having growth that's penetrating the aquifers significantly and creating a lot more of individual well and individual septic systems. We have several nitrate priority areas in the Treasure Valley, and that's, the principal cause of that is unsealed wells that allow septage and possibly influence from feedlots, of course, or big nitrate, but things that allow nitrate and nitrite. While the ground is an excellent treatment mechanism for removing pathogens and things, nitrate and nitrate compounds survive, and they find their way down the annular space between the hole that was cut for the well and the casing that was placed in that hole, and they contaminate water. So we're very anxious to prevent contamination of aquifers with proliferation of wells, and maybe wells that aren't sealed in a manner that protects the aquifer. So thanks for letting me tangent on that because it's important to me. All right. So I'll talk a little more about these slides actually. Here you see, this is the Cirrus Point development. When the economy boomed in the early 2000s and died off in the mid 2000s, we had numerous subdivisions that had been entitled through the land use permitting process and had begun construction. And it's challenging when there's a frenzy of development. That's happening now. It happened then. State statute protects any property owners upstream delivery rights of irrigation water and downstream drainage rights. So if my parcel receives water through someone else's property, I still have a right to continue, even if they develop their property. If the guy downstream of me develops his property, I still have the right for my water to drain as it has historically. The state statute allows one of these folks, the guy upstream or downstream of me, to alter those, but they've got to function in as good or better a way than they do originally. And so it was a challenge protecting that during the boom. That's a part of all of the entitlement documents. There's typically, when a rezone or an annexation occurs, there's a development agreement that reiterates those important facets of state statute, but it's required by state law. It's the enforcement that becomes an issue. If it's not included in those entitlement documents, like a development agreement or the city council's order of decision, or if it were in the Canyon County or another county, the Board of Commissioners order of decision, it's a civil matter, right? I could say, well, the city let this development happen. They didn't protect me. I can sue this guy because he's breaking Idaho law. It's a civil statute. Where if it's included in the development agreement, we can help to enforce that as development occurs. And that's something that we've become more aware of because of the booms that have happened. Occasionally we've had some bad examples, some bad things happen. This development on the right, you can see, I bring this up not because there was a real bad instance here, but these are irrigation boxes where an irrigation facility was rerouted good, and it is functioning, but you can see that when the bubble burst, these guys went back to agricultural production, and now the farmer's having to work his way around those irrigation boxes. Not the worst of it. The worst one I can think of is now redeveloped, and so I can't show you. I didn't have access to a quick picture of it, but roads were cut in, other utilities were put in, and then it went back to ag production, and it was a miserable piece of property to farm because of the utilities and the risk of hitting things and breaking things that arguably had value for some future development. So the way that we really work through these, we notify irrigation entities, and they work hard to help us to be aware of these rights. We ask developers to work with the irrigation entities as well and provide us with certification from the irrigation entity that they're protecting upstream and downstream drainage rights. That's not the irrigation district's problem to do. We're all trying to cooperate on it. And arguably under state statute, one might argue that it's not the city's prerogative to do either, but as we work together on it, it's not Pioneer's problem as an example, because they deliver to a delivery point, and then there's private facilities that get stuff places, but they know the system well because their ditch riders are out there helping those agricultural customers use it all the time. And so they always try to help us with detecting that. Not a perfect system, but it does help a lot. And I think we've evaded a lot of problems or challenges that could have arisen without cooperating. So with that, I would like to accept any questions you have. If there's other questions about city stuff, we were having a chat before the meeting started that my role as the Public Works Director, I'm responsible for the irrigation, water, sewer, airport, building, and lots of different facets. So I'm not a master of all these things. I have a working knowledge of several of them. I can help you with other questions that you might have about city infrastructure and things. So if there's questions, let's dig into that. If there's not, then I'll talk to you a little bit more about some things that I think are important for the enhancement network.
Anyone have any questions? If they don't, I do.
I was going to ask, yeah.
Go ahead, Pat.
You just talk a little more, Brent, about like how you deal with the conflict, like when there's a bad water year, like we have a drought on the horizon now. Is that still in effect for your area? I mean, I've also seen the snowpack seem like it's gone up as well. But when you have that conflict, you know, how does that resolution come together? Are you driving that boat, and is it a lot of goodwill, or are there other mechanisms that help make things happen?
Great question, Patrick. So first of all, the way that it works and the best way it brings about, in my opinion, the best outcome is cooperation. So it's a cooperative effort between us and Pioneer. And we're working with Pioneer on a daily basis with these pump stations because they're delivering the water to them. And so we're in touch all the time. Our irrigation team is working with them on a daily basis for the delivery water to those pump stations. And so that, and we also work with them on the development stuff that's happening, making sure that, oh, this new development wants to provide water, irrigation water. How are we going to change the way the delivery happens to make it work well? So we're communicating with them, and they're communicating with us often. Again, as I said, we screw up sometimes. Communication is not perfect, but it's that, I think that goodwill is the biggest element of it. And then to go beyond that, what if goodwill is not enough, right?
Right.
And so there are mechanisms, Pioneer has the prerogative to reduce the delivery. They have that prerogative under state statute. And so like it or not, need it or not, want it or not, they can do that. It doesn't do us any good or our citizens any good if we don't work with them to implement those things, but we want to. We care about, we want to bring a harvest in. We're totally down with saying to the public together that brown is the new green if it's needed, right? Our lawns and the beauty of the city is a big deal. We care about that, but at the end of the day, people's livelihoods are on the line. The ability to feed the world is on the line. We generate a lot of food here and a lot of seed that also feeds the world here. So we're supportive of protecting that resource when things get tough. And thank heavens we have a wonderful community that's receptive and good partners who are cooperative, and I like to think of us as a cooperative partner too, to make that work.
Cool. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, I'll throw one more thing in, Pat, if you don't mind. And that is one of the things we've considered as a city. I talked about odd even watering. It helps so much because we can deliver. It's basically the way that farmers do it, right? The farmers don't say, well, I'm going to take my miner's inch, 9 gallons per minute per acre from my farm all the time. No, they're going to say, hey, if I water right now, next door neighbor farmer, I'm going to hit it hard. And then you take all the water next week, right? That's really the way that's working most of the time. And it's the way it's being balanced, and the ditch riders are helping facilitate that. Odd even is an analogy to that, where we can let more people water. They're going to experience better pressure. They can water one day and then other people can water the other day. And some people don't realize that it really is better for their lawn not to be watered every day. So that's another mechanism. We could force the issue on that. We could say you must water odd even. Another place we can force the issue is on drinking water. We can say we're going to fine you if you use drinking water for irrigation purposes. And so we step back from those things unless we have to do that. But we've had a great response from the community. Last year was a wonderful example, and so thank heavens.
Funny follow-up on that is, do you feel like the population moving to Caldwell are from areas where, I'm wondering if they're like Southern Californians, which is probably more of a stereotype, but that they are happy to have so much water for the first time in many, many years?
That's a great point, Patrick. I presume so. I don't know for sure, but yeah, I mean, that's probably way better than what we've experienced in other places.
All right. I'll pass the mic on to I think someone's been texting a few or typing in a few comments.
Do other folks have questions?
Yeah, I actually have a question. Brent, great talk. That was super awesome. I am a student at Boise State. I'm a grad student, and I have been doing a lot of reading up on water rights. And I just feel like there's a lot of nuances. So I was wondering, you kind of touched on this, but so if a farmer sells their land for development, and there's like a water right tied to that land, does then the water right get transferred to the neighborhood? And then does, like, if it's in city limits, do you guys get that water right to then use at your pump stations? Is that kind of how that works? Or am I like not understanding that correctly.
No, Bridget, you're right on target. In fact, I have to tell you that something that's amazing about Brent is there are so many amazingly intelligent and very qualified people here. I'll admit that it was a little intimidating for me to be asked, especially as I'm looking through all the people who participate in Brent, because I sure don't know everything. But I can tell you, you're exactly right that the state statute provides an opportunity to pool water rights. And the way that happens is it's a requirement that we place. Our interpretation of that is that the developers need to provide those water rights to the city so that we have the underlying right. And then Pioneer or the other irrigation entity, Pioneer is most of Caldwell, but the other irrigation entity, if it's a different one, they deliver that water. We pay them the assessment because they are delivering it, right? And then but yes, we do ask developers or require developers to dedicate those water rights to the city for the purpose of pooling and delivery.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Oh, I had a follow-up for that one. Is that the way that Caldwell does it? Is that kind of unique to other ways that other cities in the valley do it? Like it seems like Boise doesn't control the water rights for all of these subdivisions that pop up, do they?
I don't know the answer to that one, Alyssa. I'm sorry. I can't remember if Boise is running a pressure irrigation system, if they're performing as a municipal irrigation provider or not. Sorry about that. Sometimes I can tell you, I do know of instances in Ada County where they're leaving that in the hands of the homeowners associations. So that's not uncommon, but there are challenges to it. You know, it is easier probably from an economy of scale standpoint to do that on a larger scale. Nampa's got an excellent pressure irrigation network. Ours is frankly, we're still trying to develop in some of the ways that Nampa had done better on many years ago when we didn't get on that boat for some time after Nampa.
I got a couple questions. Actually, I got several. The first one would requiring that new developments promote xeriscaping instead of these lush lawns help with managing the municipal irrigation demands?
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Louisa. So yeah, the xeriscaping is something that would help a lot. And it also does run into at least the feelings of the city fathers or the political leaders. We like our grass in Idaho, and a lot of citizens like their grass. We have discouraged or even prohibited more than a certain quantity of xeriscaping in open space areas on subdivisions. A private property owner is at liberty, of course, to do whatever they want that way. If they want to do xeriscape or, that's their prerogative to do. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It would clearly help with irrigation demands. I think we talked a little bit before the meeting started about how people overwater. People use a lot more water for turf grass than they need to. And I don't know if maybe education can be a part of that. There may come a time when xeriscaping is not an option. It's a must. That could come to be here. We've been blessed to have good water for a long time here. But at this moment in time, we're not in a hard promotion of that. That changes though with political figures. Mayor Nancolis, who is absolutely amazing, 24-year mayor. I feel like he's done a lot to benefit the valley and certainly Caldwell to a great degree. That said, he was not a big fan of xeriscape, and the new mayor is a bigger fan of xeriscape. So there are political implications.
There's also implications towards wildlife in that, they've documented a huge decline in birds, for example. Yeah. And it seems like promoting more native landscaping would not only reduce irrigation demand, but it would also provide more habitat for birds and pollinators and other things that are in steep decline that definitely have an effect on our quality of life.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Good point.
Another question I have is, where's the best place to find current information on when municipal irrigation water will be turned on and off for a specific subdivision. I've been having a lot of trouble finding that.
Oh, well, I think the best place to find it would be on the city webpage. Let me see if I can pull that up here. I want to do it on. Oh, dang. I didn't think of my computer would log itself out while we're working. I'm working with two machines at the moment. Yeah, so the City of Caldwell's webpage is going to be a good source, but another place, and I will tell you this, Caldwell is a city that's growing fast, and we could do a lot better with our information resources. We're trying to catch up. The revenue associated with fast growth lags, of course. And so we're trying to catch up with doing a good job putting information out there. But we do have, that's typically going to be posted. Now we'll tell you this, we learned that that's going to follow on when we learn that irrigation is going to be turned on the agricultural system or the delivery system.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll announce that after. Typically we will charge the systems, and we'll ask people with city water for a couple of reasons. We've had some proliferation of something called Asian clams, tiny clams. They're microscopic. They can pass through a filter and then grow big and clog pipes. There was some proliferation of Asian clams in the early days of our irrigation system. So we'll actually put drinking water in those lines and charge the lines with that, because the small chlorine residual in drinking water will control the clam growth. So we should all feel good about drinking it. I'm just kidding. That comes to mind. But it's we ask people not to irrigate during that time, because we're not putting water in to pressurize the system so it could run sprinklers. It's just enough to get the system pressurized and clean, so we'll flush and stuff like that. But then we'll usually start within 3 or 4 days of when the irrigation entities, the real irrigation entities, say that they're going to turn on and deliver water. They need to wet their ditches, so they have a similar process, I guess, analogous process. They got to wet the ditches so that they'll hold water better and go through and clean all the ditches, make sure everything's working before they're ready to actually deliver. And then once they go through that process, or as they're going through that process, they're going to tell us, we're going to turn on this day, and then we'll usually announce turning on a few days later.
Okay, and then my home system doesn't allow me to do odd even day watering. I can't do it by, whether today is an odd numbered day or an even numbered day. My system is like days of the week. So I could do, like Monday, Tuesday, whatever. What about setting up a system based on day of the week and house numbers? So like odd numbered houses, water on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, even numbered houses, water on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and nobody water on Sunday, or something like that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's exactly right, Louisa. It doesn't have to be odd even. That's the easiest thing to push out there and say, if your address is odd, water on an odd day, right? But you're exactly right. That's challenging, because a lot of sprinkler clocks don't do that. It's really more a matter of saying, if you could get cooperation in your neighborhood, in your homeowners association, to say, hey, let's do exactly as you said. The thing that matters is that not everyone's watering at the same time. People want to water from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. every day. And so if you can break that, even if you can water different times of day, it's really only about making sure not everyone's using the system at the same time.
Yeah, is watering in the wee hours of the morning better than watering in the middle of the day in terms of demand on the system?
Yeah, it is. It is. Some people worry about if they're going to promote fungus in their lawn if they water at night. We water all of the parks at night because we want to have them be available for use during the day. So, and I don't know of us having big problems with that, but there's a lot of possibilities, I guess. But yeah, watering at night works great. Watering at a different time of day can be very good. Okay. I used to water at night too, and my wife got mad at me because the sprinkler woke her up. But
okay, I have one more question, but I want to let somebody else ask a question if they have one.
Brent, I have one more question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
So you have been talking about how you were asking people to water on odd even days. It's awesome that people are so receptive, and that's like super exciting to hear in terms of water conservation efforts. But you said you haven't, like the city hasn't put any limits in place saying like you have to do this or like you can't water because we're in a drought. And I'm wondering if the city actually has the ability to do that based on like Idaho water rights statutes? And is it like the way that you guys pool your water to the city that would like enable you to do that if there were to come a time that was put in place?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to rephrase it, Bridget. What's the source of legal authority for the city to put limits on the use of irrigation water? Is that fair?
Yeah.
I do not know exactly how we would trace that back. I believe it is possible. It's one that we would vet with the city attorney's office to review. And I think it would have to be sourced in Title 50, probably Chapter 18. But in terms of drinking water, we certainly have the capability to do that, to prohibit the use of drinking water for irrigation purposes. And that is actually prohibited in terms of connecting a sprinkler system to it, unless someone is in a situation that city code elucidates that's really their only option. We do have some allowances, but they have to go through that process. Otherwise, it is illegal, and we actually will. We can fine them for it. And if, that's an intent-based thing, right? If you find someone who just ignorantly did it, then you say, okay, you can't do this, got to disconnect, use your surface water. I do think that it is possible for us to do it. I can't tell you what the exact legal mechanism is. And that, of course, means I could be wrong, but about us being able to, but I believe it's possible. The city fathers have been unwilling in the past for us to make a statute or law that you have to odd even water or stagger water days. And maybe because of some of the things Louisa has experienced, right? It's not practical for everyone to do it in this exact way. And it's not important that everyone do it in that exact way.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Well,
I'll ask my last question then, if nobody else has one. So could, for instance, Caldwell shut off the municipal irrigation water during a drought earlier than like Pioneer Irrigation District in order to preserve water flow through for crops?
Yes, Louisa, thank you. I think that is possible. And if it came to that, I think we would do that. Until it gets to a point where that's the only option, we would try to just throttle it back and say, hey, we're cutting your delivery to your sub pump station down to this. And then we just try to help people understand what the consequences will be if everyone doesn't try to make a parallel conservation of water. You keep watering. If too many people water, the pump station will shut down, and we'll have to restart it and try again. So I think we would do what you mentioned if we had to make sure that there could be a harvest.
Okay, yeah. Okay, any other last questions for Brent? Hearing none.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for the informative discussion. And then before everyone leaves, anyone who signed up for this is now also signed up to receive our newsletter. So please watch that newsletter for additional Riverside chats, any blogs that we put out, and other events that people can participate in. And one of the things we're working on is another Make It Pretty River cleanup event. Hopefully we'll be doing Caldwell again, because that seems to be pretty popular. And I'd like to request that you please donate to Bryn to support these sorts of efforts and the work that Bryn does. And please visit our website at www.boiseriverinhancement.org. And I thank you, everyone, for attending.
Hi, everyone.
Bye, thank you. It's good to
Thanks,
meet you.
Alyssa.
Brent.
Great to meet you too. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.